Hey again. All right, so in this video, we're going to study John Locke and the creation of the idea of political liberalism. Political liberalism basically is the ideas that we take for granted, that there are certain rights that people have, and those rights sort of added together suggest that we should be basically free from government hassling us. And that everybody should be treated equally under the law and has the same duty to conduct themselves according to the law. That's basically what political liberalism means. We don't think of that as being something that would be invented, but John Locke is the guy. So he is doing this in the year 1690, and he's in the Enlightenment, and he's turning his ideas about, so what is the way that we could organize human affairs that would be best for individuals? And he has several concepts that we have to know, and he's going to do this as systematically, according to, it's not exactly according to the scientific, the ideas from the scientific revolution, but he does try to be very systematic about things, just kind of science-y at least. To begin with, people, he says, exist in a state of nature. And in that state of nature, and that's by the way, that's like a term of his, so it's a term that you need to know. In that state of nature, we are free, we are equal, we have natural, a third term, and actually this is a term that I need to probably put up here on the board. We have natural rights. And these natural rights, and this is something John Locke is inventing in 1690, these are going to sound really familiar to you. We have the right to life, liberty, our possessions, our health. Locke says that this is just the way human existence should be. Now, I'm going to pause what I'm saying right now to just remind you of what I said a video ago about feudalism and the great chain of being. This is nothing like that. There's no equality. There's no natural rights. The king can do whatever he wants. The monarchs can do what, or the feudal lords can do whatever they want. There's no equality. There's no sense of freedom. You are born into a position, and that's where you will stay. John Locke, we take political liberalism for granted. He is a radical at the time in 1690. So he says, human existence begins in a state of nature. We all have these natural rights, which I told you, life, liberty, health, and the other one that I want to point out, I said possessions. We can also think of that as private property. John Locke is the person who starts us thinking about our own ownership of things. Obviously, people owned things before, but Locke is saying you have a right to those things and people cannot take them away from you. All right, everything I've said up to now is the state of nature that John Locke says we exist in before government, before interactions with other people. That's the state of nature. He then goes on to say, and there is a law of nature. And this law of nature says no one ought to harm another person's life, their health, their liberty, or their possessions. In other words, do what you want to do, but you can't mess with me. That's the law of nature. And so far this sounds kind of fantastic, doesn't it? I mean, you've got all these rights. Nobody can mess with you. You can't mess with anybody else. Everybody gets along. All right, the problem comes in, and the problem comes in between here. There's not really a term that goes with it. The problem is, he says, it's easy for people to misapply this rule. They may accidentally, not intentionally, think, well, I have a right to that thing, and somebody else thinks they have a right to it, and it's basically this law of nature is something that if I interpret it differently than you interpret it, we can end up in conflict with each other. So he says, in order to avoid those conflicts, what we need is a government. That government is only there, according to John Locke, is only there to make sure that this law of nature, that this law of nature is applied equally to everybody. That's the whole point of government to him. It's people can't mess with my property. John Locke is sort of the father of libertarianism. Government does not exist except to keep people from stealing my stuff or hurting me. Otherwise, government should be out of our way. John Locke is the person who comes up with that. In order to have a government work, we get to his last step. I think this is the last step. It's the last term I've got on the board. We enter into a social contract. And the social contract is very specific. The social contract says we will allow a thing called government to have power over us. We will allow that because remember, nobody's got power over us in this state of nature. We have natural rights. But we will enter into a social contract with government. We will say, government, you have power over us. You even have the right to violence against us if you will protect my natural rights. That's the social contract. You keep me safe, I will give up some of my rights to you. And Locke even said beyond just the right to violence. He said, we will give up parts of our other rights like some of my rights to my own possessions in the form of taxation. Okay, so we exist in a state of nature with natural rights. The law of nature says don't mess with anybody, but we're going to misapply that sometimes, so we need this social contract. We create a government that has power over us. As I said, the government is super, super limited in this. All it's supposed to do is protect our natural rights. Locke goes on to say that if government doesn't live up to their end of the social contract, we have a right to revolt. We do not have to give up our rights to this government indefinitely. If the government is not protecting my natural rights, I have the right to revolt. And all of that stuff adds up to Lockean political liberalism. The idea that there are natural rights and the law protects them. The idea that we are all equal under the law. The idea that government exists for everyone. It's not there to protect monarchs but not serfs. So this is a long way from feudalism. And last point is this changes the world. We live in this and we completely understand this as just normal. None of you would say, well, just because Mark Zuckerberg is a billionaire, he should be treated differently. But that's exactly what every person before the year 1500, really going up to about, sorry, I didn't write the year up there, 1690. That's what everybody thought. Remember those generation after generation after generation? None of those people expected to be treated equally. None of those people considered themselves free. John Locke changes the world with this idea. And that is going to lead to some pretty unexpected consequences that we will see just before the year 1800. But in the next video, we've got to complete our change of the world from feudalism to the modern world so Locke has done it for our government, our sense of our rights and laws. Adam Smith is going to do it for the economy. So we will talk about that in the next video.